With the NFL draft almost here, dynasty value is going to be changing up and down in every single direction. So right now is the time that you want to go ahead and start making those dynasty trades. To do that, well, you're going to need to look at some players, and we brought on a special guest to take a look at some dynasty trade targets. And today we've got the podfather himself, Matt Kelly, joining me and Dave Kluge today on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. Matt, thank you for joining us today, man.
Yeah, we're looking up players. We're going to playerprofiler.com, looking at the advanced stats, seeing who might be performing better than their numbers indicate in previous years and could be a trade target by some smart GM. That'd be cool in the NFL. And then, especially when that happens, then all of a sudden that's what stimulates trades in dynasty leagues. So one of my exercises is trying to decide who could be traded in the actual NFL. And then have that translate into a potential dynasty trade target. And I can just start by throwing names out, correct?
Do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Dump them all at once. All
just
20
throw names out.
All 23 names.
Discuss.
Listener, if you're listening on the podcast, switch this to like half speed right now and go.
Do you like athletic young running backs with huge upside that all they do is produce RB1 numbers? You like those guys, right? Especially in Dynasty, there's so few of them, and you want to get them before the age apex. Well, I have a guy who is undervalued. He might be at a low point. In fact, he might be at his like Saquon Barkley trough of his Dynasty value for the next 3 or 4 years, and this is like the moment to get him because his team doesn't respect him. And sometimes, the team doesn't respect a player, but for whatever reason, fantasy gamers overrate him and then consistently doesn't get the opportunities. And then we're always like frustrated. Why isn't this happening? In this particular case, though, we had, a full season last year where it was a coming to Jesus. And now I think that the fantasy public and especially dynasty leaguers have overcorrected on this player. This is what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the overcorrection. I think the overcorrection is here. It's happening. And it's on Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a absolute trade target. And I was talking to my co-host of the Sonic Truth podcast, Theo Greminger, and he was saying that he knows that Breece Hall is a great trade target in Dynasty because of all the junk offers he's getting for his Breece Hall. So he's like, oh, okay, that's a signal. I need more. You want to send me junk offers for player X? I'm going to go get more player X. That's the move. That is the move. And what I think is going to happen, maybe, potentially, unlikely, but could, is the Las Vegas Raiders are too savvy to draft Ashton Genty. Have you noticed that there's been great moves being made in the last couple off seasons by two former Gruden teams, Washington and Las Vegas? I'm so used to Gruden's running these organizations into the ground that to see them making savvy, sound decisions, not trading up, trading back, best player available. Oh, you're just going to let me have Brock Bowers? I'll take him. Right. Once upon a time, you could see Washington like trading up to get Caleb Williams, trading a future first to flip the number 1 and number 2 pick. No, we're just going to take what the draft is giving us. Actually, the guy you let fall to number 2 is way better than the guy that you drafted at number 1. So thank you very much. And now they're making all these great free agent value, free agent moves. Free agents now want to go there. It's like the next destination. It was Philadelphia. People want to go play with Jalen Hurts. They love Jalen Hurts. He's just a great leader. Like he's like the new Tom Brady in that way. People just want to go play with him. People now want to go play with Jaden Daniels. And so the big need they have is running back. But there's no Ashton Genty available to them, right? So what do? Well, if you're the Jets and you're sitting at 7 and the Raiders pass on Genty, you're going to go to your board. This is how it works. This is not how I would run my team, but you've seen this. We've seen enough Hard Knocks where you know how it works. There's just a board with best player available, and sometimes these teams just go to it and they pick the guy that's next up. And so you could absolutely, and Lance Zierlein, we respect Lance Zierlein, right? He's got NFL bloodlines. He talks to so many insiders and people in front offices. Lance Zierlein is mocking Ashton Genty to the Jets.
I've seen that.
That is a thing that's happening.
Yep.
Okay, that is a thing that's happening, and it makes sense because the Jets don't respect Breece Hall. They think Breece Hall is a satellite back. They think that Breece Hall is Theo Riddick. That's how they're treating him. And this is, I just think it's a gross sort of failure of self-scouting by the Jets, and some team is going to benefit from this, and I think it's going to be Washington. I think what's going to happen is Washington is going to pick up the phone instantly when the Jets make that draft pick, and they are going to do a trade to acquire Breece Hall at value. Breece Hall is going to land in Washington, and he's going to have the perfect role where he's going to get like 60% of the touches, a bunch of these between the 20s, nonsense carries, low equity carries are going to go to Brian Robinson, and it's going to be the Breece Hall show. We coined the term at Player Profiler, the Alfred Morris corollary, where Alfred Morris getting 5 yards a carry because there's a linebacker being occupied by RG3. So now we have actually an explosive runner who can put up 5+ yards per carry on the Jets, behind the Jets offensive line a couple of years ago. Way over 5 yards a carry for Breece Hall. Now that guy lands in Washington, and they're constantly improving all aspects of their offense. This is the great unlock where you could conceivably see Breece Hall being the RB1 in fantasy in that scenario. It's very much possible. And for that reason, there's a lot of outcomes where Breece Hall gets traded. Breece Hall ends up bouncing back because he's just that talented. The guy runs a sub 4.4 40. You look at the advanced stats. He's one of the target earners out of the backfield, and those touches just count a lot more towards fantasy points than between the tackles carries. And if there's any kind of step forward by the Jets or they trade him, there's just so many different outs for Breece Hall where the core profile is exactly what you're trying to acquire in Dynasty. And now you can get him at whatever it is, 60% of what you had to pay for him not long ago. That's a move I'm making.
Yeah, I've still got Breece Hall locked in as a top 5 Dynasty running back. And I think it's crazy that anybody would put him outside of there. I think my favorite thing with Breece Hall is the kid comes off of a torn ACL and gives us a top 2 fantasy finish. The year after tearing his ACL, I mean, we know that he's a dog. We know that he can catch passes, score touchdowns, all those good things. And while we're kind of pontificating about what might happen,
we don't know that, though.
We don't know that.
Apparently, we don't know that. You and I know that, but a lot of Dynasty, apparently, they don't know that. They don't know he's a dog. They think he's overrated. They think that he's trending towards being,
like you said,
a marginal player in the league, and that's incorrect.
So, you talk about the Raiders needing a running back and probably being smart enough not to take a running back in the top 6. Matt, do you remember who Zach Charbonnet's coach was in college at UCLA?
Tell me.
Chip Kelly, the current offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. Do you remember who drafted Zach Charbonnet in the NFL?
Rhymes with Schmeat Schmerl.
Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll, now the head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Potentially Zach Charbonnet landing in Las Vegas and opening up Ken Walker, who I think is another great young dynasty buy.
Dave, I'm loving your Pepe Silvio right here. You're just going to the board and just connecting all of these. It's great. Yeah. And you know what? But all these situations, they remind me of Joe Mixon a bit last year, which I know it's different because that was like a last second trade because he was going to get cut. But it's these teams that are going all in on providing weapons around a young quarterback. And so we talk about the Jaden Daniels thing, and even with the Seahawks, like whatever direction they're going to go with Sam Darnold, if they feel like they're actually rebuilding something with him, like these teams are going to continue to make moves. So I really like this, Matt. I really like this.
This is what's going to, now again, it may not happen, right? But this is why you bet your flush draws on the turn, because if it lines up, you get all the money. You stack your opponent.
A flush draw.
If things line up for Breece Hall, then you're just assured essentially of making the playoffs in Dynasty. If your team is currently competitive, that is the puts me over the top move for a currently competitive Dynasty team. And he's young enough that a rebuilding team can justify. I mean, he's there's no mode of your team where you could say, yeah, I don't know about that. He's not for me, right? Like, I think Aaron Jones is a great trade target. But again, if you're rebuilding the window on Aaron Jones, not there for. But even if you're a hyperactive player, maybe you get Aaron Jones now, realizing, wait, the market doesn't understand. Like, this he's teed up. They just have to fade a running back. Mm-hmm. In some cases, it's like Jaylen Warren. There's already a hype and a buzz about Jaylen Warren, where I actually like a guy like Kenny Gainwell, because think about what they have to fade. He has to fade a first-round running back because the second-round pick has already been given away to the Seahawks to acquire DK Metcalf. So now we're talking about Kenny Gainwell being behind an undrafted running back that's never carried a full workload in the NFL, and he actually has a every down workhorse back year on his resume back at Memphis. And what we've seen just in these little glimpses behind Swift and Barkley is that Gainwell's an efficient player and can excel everywhere. You're fading a first-round running back. That's it. And okay, what if the Steelers draft a third-round running back? Well, that third-round running back is going to be not as seasoned and ready to play in camp and in preseason as Kenny Gainwell. There's also going to be some of these running backs that get drafted in the third and fourth round that come in the summer. Now, I love this class. This is the deepest, most talented running back class I've ever seen. But there's going to be a bunch of these backs that will come in and have ball security issues in camp, that have pass protection issues in camp, that fantasy gamers love, but the coaches just aren't there, like Kendre Miller. And remember, Kendre Miller was a third-round pick, and the coaching staff hates his guts.
Old coaching staff. There's still chance going into 2025.
You're telling me, though, but this is exactly what there's a couple Kendre Millers in this class. We just we don't know who they are yet, but those are some of the RB2s that no one's talking. What I love about this NFL draft in particular is that there's some RB2s like Kenneth Gainwell that are actually going to find themselves in peach positions, great spots. And then there's some RB2s that dynasty leaguers love, right? I'm not saying Zach Charbonnet, but things could actually break wrong for Zach Charbonnet. Things could break wrong for so many RB. Think about all the RB2s things could break wrong for. Tajay Spears, even like a David Montgomery.
Yeah.
Like even a David Montgomery is at risk. There's it's just one run. People love Jalen Wright. I mentioned Trey Benson, and there's just so many where, I like Antonio Gibson, but it's not just RB2s. There's RB1s that are very much at risk. I'm not trading for Ramondre Stevenson. Very careful about the running backs that I'm trading for in Dynasty right now. They have to fit a certain profile where you have to be at like bottom value. Like they have to be like end of the startup draft pick, like Kenneth Gainwell, or a running back who's a backup on a team that is least likely to draft a running back. And I'm telling you, the Patriots are in the market for a running back. You might not think that because you love Ramondre Stevenson, but they are. Right. And that's the case with a lot of these teams.
You look at the NFL draft this year, there's realistically 35 to 40 running backs potentially getting drafted. Like there are 35 to 40 running backs that have round 7 or better grades on them, which means theoretically every team this year can go out and draft a running back. But you see this all the time. The running backs make that big step from year 1 into year 2. Like very rarely. You've got your blue chip guys that are drafted in round 1, drafted in round 2 that make an immediate impact. But look at how many guys we liked last year. You talk about Trey Benson, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, all these guys that did nothing as a rookie. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad football players, but the jump from college speed to NFL speed is huge. And a lot of guys can adapt, and we do see them take that step forward in year 2. So
the Packers are in the market for a running back, man. They are. Of course, they want to fill out their running back room. The Packers perceive a lack of running back depth. And a lot of dynasty leaguers are like, oh, but you have Marshawn Lloyd. You're all set. No. Marshawn Lloyd it has 1 foot in the league, 1 foot out of the league. You should understand this. It's crazy. If you go down the depth charts, it makes your head spin how many running backs are at risk. They literally only have 1 foot left in the league because there's also a bunch of undrafted running backs in this class that are going to threaten all these backs that some of us still like, some of us still holding on to, still thinking about their college tape, and it's not going to happen. There are a couple teams I think are relatively safe, but just like a couple. I do think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are relatively safe. I think one of the reasons why is they really like Sean Tucker there. And Rachaad White's coming off a very productive season 2 years ago. So I think that's one of their least priorities as a team.
You didn't mention the best running back there in Tampa Bay.
Boy.
You mentioned Rachaad White and Sean Tucker, but you're forgetting about the RB1 in Tampa Bay.
No, I don't have to. Like, we know about Bucky Irving. Right. Like, Bucky Irving. Dude, Bucky Irving, I've seen him being drafted in the second round of best ball leagues.
It's crazy.
It's insane. What are you doing? What are you doing? Now, the one argument there is that is one of the safest backfields, that he's not going to get vaporized by the NFL draft. But that's more of why I'm targeting White and Tucker in as throw-ins in dynasty trades, because I don't think that's a landing spot for a rookie, an NFL draft rookie. I also like Corum. I think that Corum is different than Jalen Wright. He's different than some of these other rookies from last year, where that team actually does view him as a potential heir apparent, whereas I don't think that the Dolphins view Wright as the heir apparent.
No, and the Dolphins is a perfect example of a team, and Packers and all these teams that are still going to be looking for running backs going into the draft. And honestly, another team that I think could be doing it's a direct relation to the team you were just talking about, the Bucs, where Liam Cohen he revamped that whole run game for the Bucs last year and creates this new monster that is Bucky Irving. But now he's over in Jacksonville. And I do think that the Jaguars could be looking at a running back in the draft, but probably not until later. And I see your eyes.
This is what I'm talking about.
I see your eyes.
We have no idea.
But
we have no idea what their board looks like. They could think, Jacksonville might think that running back is one of their big need areas.
Yeah. And so the thing is what I look at here is, right, I'm trying to read the tea leaves. If Jacksonville has this big need at running back, they pick up the 5th-year option on Travis Etienne, who's the guy that I think is actually worth a buy right now. A player that we've seen be a top 5 fantasy running back, a top 12 dynasty running back. His value has dropped so far down to running back 31 in dynasty, where, you've got him behind guys like Tyrone Tracy, Zach Charbonnet, Scadaboo, who hasn't even been drafted, Trey Benson. Like, you can go out and get Travis Etienne right now for a mid-second round pick. That's the kind of guy where I'm willing to take that risk, even if the Jaguars are drafting a running back, because I don't know that running back does enough to a guy like Travis Etienne in a Liam Cohen offense, where Liam Cohen is going to be committing to the run. They got rid of so many of these pass catching weapons. They let go of Evan Ingram because they need a tight end that can actually block and be part of that run game. And with the creativity that we're actually going to see in Jacksonville, this is one of those offenses. We saw it last year. Bucky Irving, running back 15 in points per game. Rachaad White, running back 20 in points per game. And neither guy is just this incredible running back prospect, right? I think we could end up seeing something similar with Travis Etienne, with Tank Bigsby, and whichever running back they actually do draft there. I think we could end up with a couple of guys. I'm not a big Tank Bigsby guy, but Liam, no, me, I'm not, but I'm saying with Liam Cohen and the creativity that he can have there, we're going to have someone or two guys that can be very valuable out of that Jacksonville backfield.
Put it this way.
We saw Rachaad White.
If Tank Bigsby as a prospect was in this class, he'd be like a 6th round pick.
He'd be my RB 18.
Yeah,
maybe RB 22. Yeah, he'd be way down there.
Tank Bigsby's one of those players who actually isn't even guaranteed a job in the NFL. Travis Etienne is interesting though, because he has the 5th-year option. Like, he has this security that most of these running backs we've been talking about do not. So he's not vulnerable. He could get traded. Like, there's a bunch of things that could happen where if they did bring in an elite running back because that's what they want, then he would be a candidate to be traded and actually pick up a role somewhere else. And so that's a great dented can buy. Whereas Bigsby, bye-bye. Right. So you have a buy and a bye-bye. One thing I'll say about Bucky Irving. So we have an app called Fast Draft, and it's pretty much the next thing, the thing that's going to save fantasy, right? Everyone's talking about, pick'ems. It's pretty much the pick'em games. They're all sort of suffocating the fantasy industry. It's all you ever hear about being promoted. There's no innovation. Well, welcome Fast Draft, right? You draft 6 guys, the top 4 into your lineup every week. It's that easy. Just draft, running back, wide receiver, tight end. These drafts take like 6 minutes. Doesn't take an hour to do these drafts. And in the second round, so the last draft, a draft just went off while we were talking on Fast Draft. And in the second round, pick 16 was Derrick Henry. Pick 17, Christian McCaffrey. Pick 18, Bucky Irving. Pick 19, AJ Brown. What are we doing? What are we doing? So yeah, you gotta Dave. You've drafted a few Fast Draft teams, right?
I have, yeah. I've been enjoying the app. It's a fun one.
Yeah,
I haven't this
so
offseason, but I did a lot last year.
Pick up, at some point in the show, pull up your phone and tell the people who you're high, because there's a portfolio button right there on the app, and it shows you who your sorts all your players highest to lowest owned. And you can also use promo code Dave to get a $50 deposit match when you sign up on Fast Draft. Promo code Dave. That's Dave right here, and he'll tell you at some point who his most frequently drafted player is of like the top 60, because it's just the top 60 guys that are out there that everybody knows. So that just goes to show how crazy the Bucky Irving hype has gotten. And I would not take in any format Bucky Irving over Breece Hall, just to take it all the way full circle.
No, of course
no
chance. I want to talk about another guy that I'm trying to buy, and since this has just kind of become a running back show, that's all we're talking about is running backs that we like, and the reality is running backs are it's so hard to project what running backs are going to look like before the NFL draft, especially an NFL draft like this where we talk about 35, 40 guys.
We got to talk about it now. We got to try to figure this out, dude.
Young guys who have previous production and have checked the athletic boxes and done all the things that we know they're relatively safe. That even if another guy comes in, it's not going to be a guy that's going to leapfrog somebody. And I mentioned his name earlier, but Kenneth Walker is the guy right now that I am still trying to go out and buy. And his value has just been slipping this year. I'm looking at Keep Trade Cut right now. He's the RB13 right now. We're not even viewing Kenneth Walker, a 24-year-old proven productive back, as an RB1 in Dynasty. That's just ludicrous to me. And you look at it, I'm a noted Zach Charbonnet fan. Anyone who watches this show, anybody who's watched match shows that I've been on, I've probably talked about Zach Charbonnet on just about every single one of them. But the eye test, it just favors Walker. I mean, you see him, he can do things. He's got the home run ability that Zach Charbonnet doesn't have. And Clint Kubiak, anytime he's talked about this backfield, he has just been drooling over Kenneth Walker so far. I looked last year. I think a lot of people think that there's, this split backfield because of how productive Zach Charbonnet was when he got the opportunities. But when Kenneth Walker was on the field last year, I pulled these numbers straight from Player Profiler, Matt. He was first in red zone target share among all running backs. He was fourth in overall target share among running backs, fifth in route participation, and 11th in opportunity share. So he was banged up a little bit and missed some games last year, but when he was on the field, he was very clearly the RB1 here. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Zach Charbonnet gets traded. Maybe he just stays there as the RB2. Maybe they go out and draft another day 2 or a day 3 guy. But either way, Kenneth Walker has just gotten better every year he's been in the league. And that's not just my eye test. His PFF grade has literally gone up every single year that he's been in the league. He just keeps getting better and better. And you can get him right now for a late first or an early second. And I don't think there's anybody going in rookie drafts right now at the end of the first round or the beginning of the second round that is going to have the production profile that a guy like Kenneth Walker does.
That's what I love about Player Profilers. You go and you look at the carries and where people are ranked, just the opportunities, targets, red zone touches, things you talked about. And I should actually create a list of like the top 10 typos. Top 10 typos. It's hard to say on Player Profiler. One of the typos has to be, right, that Kenneth Walker was 29th in carries last year, but 13th in targets among running backs.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, I mean, he missed a handful of games, so I understand the carries being a little bit low, but the target share, that's the big thing that has changed for Kenneth Walker. 35 targets his rookie season, 20 or 37 his second year, and then last year, despite missing 6 games, had 53 targets. Set a
Crazy.
career high, almost doubled his targets per game.
Yeah,
Enough about
so
running backs, though. Alfredo, you got a wide receiver you want to buy? Because we've talked way too much about running backs, and
Well,
I
it's
do like some
fun.
of these blue chip guys that we talked about. But the reality is the NFL is going to, or the draft is going to flip the running back landscape on its head.
Yeah.
Let's hear about a wide receiver, Alfredo. We need to switch it up.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks. Appreciate you, pal. So yeah, one of the guys it's interesting because as the season was starting to close out, he started to catch fire a little bit. And then as the offseason goes on, we keep thinking that this team is probably going to draft a wide receiver, and that's why the cost remains down on this player. But Jaylen Coker is really fun and really cost effective for someone to go and buy in Dynasty right now. And he analytically, he is just this darling that unless you're freaking in the spreadsheets, like you're probably not seeing all that stuff. And this is something I had to figure out when I went and looking at all the analytics for him. But number 2 in yards per route run versus man coverage. Number 4 in first downs per route run amongst rookies. That's only behind Lad McConkey, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. Pretty good company. And he's got this high catch rate, man. He's being put into a role that really suits Bryce Young in that offense, which is that slot receiver role, which I know has typically been taken over by Adam Thielen, but we are starting to see a little bit of that changing of the guard, because even when Adam Thielen returned to play with Jaylen Coker, there was about an even target share between the two. Like nothing really was ceded back to Adam Thielen. And Dave, what I love here is that our very own Adam Harstead, who's like easily the smartest person I know. I don't even understand the words that are in his Twitter bio, but he wrote an awesome article all about his analytical model that he uses to evaluate rookie wide receivers. You can find this over on footballguys.com. And he's been really successful with it year over year. And what he's looked at is looking at the yards per route run, first down per route run, all these different various analytical models that go into this. And he shows that Jaylen Coker should be one of your main dynasty buys right now, one of the guys that you're going after. And it goes beyond that, not just the analytics too, Dave. It's his quarterback, Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Totally new guy towards the end of the season there. He had his swag back, and a lot of it, if you go back and you start like actually watching those games, and I hate to be that guy, I watched the film, but when I started doing that, he's doing a lot of stuff with Jaylen Coker where he's trusting him. And you don't really see that a whole lot with a young, stressed out quarterback and a rookie wide receiver. There's an actual chemistry that's there. And there was an interview recently where Bryce Young's talking about it, and he's saying this guy went from being P squad, practice squad, to, just being on the active roster, to being part of our game plan on Sundays. And now he's a big part of our future. So listen, I still think it's very possible that the Carolina Panthers go and draft a Tet McMillan in round 1 at pick 8. But I also think it's very possible they just stick with a edge rusher and try to help that defense. And we run it back with Jaylen Coker and Adam Thielen and more Xavier Legette for Bryce Young. Keep hoping that the team can rely on the defense and the running game. But Jaylen Coker seems like a really fun buy for me because he's so cheap.
So when I look at this Panthers wide receiver room right now, everybody's playing out of position. Nobody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
You got 6 slot receivers.
Right. There's one guy that they can draft that just makes so much sense, and it might be a little bit of a reach. A lot of people, the Lance Erlines and the Bucky Brooks, they've got him down in the 20s. But Tet McMillan at 8 just makes so much sense because that's the X receiver that they need. Then Xavier Legette moves into the slot where he can use his athleticism to do what he does best. And then Jaylen Coker moves out to flanker. And if you go back and watch what this guy did at Holy Cross, he can stretch the field and he can make contested catches. So this is one of, and of course, Adam Thielen, the rotted out husk of Adam Thielen is still somewhere on that roster, and he'll have to fit in at some point. But long term, it just makes so much sense to have McMillan at the X, Legette in the slot, and then Coker as the flanker. That's how this team should be built, and they need that guy in a Canals offense. We've seen it with DK Metcalf, we've seen it with Mike Evans, and now we can see it with Tet McMillan. And of course, we're trying to guess, what's going to happen in the NFL draft. But if they do draft McMillan at 8, I think it unlocks both Coker and Legette to be their best players.
Why isn't that an obvious pick? Why isn't McMillan being mocked in the top 10?
Prospect fatigue, because he's been the consensus wide receiver 1 for the last 6 months, And now people are bored about it. Now Luther Burden is a round 2 pick, and Ted McMillan's going to fall to the end of round 1.
Is it prospect fatigue, or is it new information coming out? Because we do say that all the time, and it's not new information on a player. It's new information about teams' preferences, right? Because there are these blue chip edge rushers, and teams convince themselves all the time. They do it with Trayvon Walker as the top pick. They do this all the time, where they take edge rushers over a wide receiver, even a guy who's produced year after year. So the Panthers, I know it makes the most sense. That's why I mentioned Ted McMillan to them in the top 10. But they could sit there and say, we got to keep building our defense, which doesn't make sense to me, but we could very easily see them do that.
They've already invested so much in that defense. This is the screaming need area that they have, even though they did hit on Coker. That's the thing. Just because you hit on an undrafted free agent doesn't mean you're good. You can pair that with another hit in the first round. Then
when you're really good.
Now we're talking. Now we're cooking with gas. That's why Bryce Young is also a trade target in Dynasty, I believe.
Absolutely.
Ted McMillan has the size. He's a throwback, proper X receiver, like you said. He's got the athleticism. We saw his pro day numbers. They are, right there with like more explosive Allen Robinson type, athleticism numbers, which is what you're looking for.
An AJ Green comp.
Really there's AJ Green comps. There's so many great comps out there where we've been looking for this guy for years. The AJ Green, Brandon Marshall type guy. That's Ted McMillan. It's a gift that he's there. I mean, I remember a draft where Jaylen Waddle went at 6, where Kyle Pitts went at 4, and Jamar Chase went at 5, and all of them went ahead of Penei Sewell. And the team that drafted Penei Sewell is obviously the team that's, teed up to win a Super Bowl eventually, because that's what you do in that situation. You build from the point of attack out. So there's plenty of teams recently that have decided to go with sexy skill guy in the top 10 over the chalk, point of attack building block asset, which is what they should be doing. So I absolutely could see that. And I think that may be, you can't talk to all the teams. So you start to get a feel as a mock drafter for some of the teams' big boards, but there's plenty of teams that can come out off from the side and grab a guy. And then other times it's just the need is so clear and the fit is so clear. And like, if you asked me without even knowing, like, where should McMillan go, I'd be like, I don't know, pick 8. Like he's a top 10 player in this draft. Just like, yes, I agree. Genty is a top 10 player in this draft. Now, based on positional value, you shouldn't be drafting a running back in the top 10 under any circumstances, but he's going to go top 10 because there's still plenty of teams out there that don't fully understand positional value, even though we thought we had it solved, right? Okay. Wow, Barkley actually was a value. An elite running back was, available in the trade market and in free agency for a reasonable price. Wow, the NFL's finally got it. But now you're hearing all of this, unwinding of that lesson. And because Barkley was the reason, right? He was the reason that Spagnuolo went on tilt. And the Eagles got there, and then the threat of Barkley is what handed them the Super Bowl, even though that's not right. Like, it was, it's Jalen Hurts in the defense. But no, the narrative has been since the Super Bowl that, Barkley was the missing piece. So now we're going to see how pervasive is that narrative in these NFL front offices. It's one of the under-the-radar narratives to watch and storylines to watch in the NFL draft is how many teams' front offices had their brain broken by Saquon Barkley.
And not just Saquon Barkley. I mean, if you look back, the last handful of running backs that have been drafted inside the top 10 have all kind of worked out for their team. Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey,
well, because you're not drafting
Barkley.
A guy that high unless he's a blue chip talent now.
Right. I mean,
before they were just drafting anybody in the top.
So, like, the floor for a top 10 pick over the last decade is Leonard Fournette. And I'd be pretty darn happy with a Leonard Fournette. But Matt, let's hear, because I want to give the audience a peek behind the curtain. I asked Matt to provide 3 dynasty buy lows, and he sent me a list of about 20 guys. So I have no idea where you're going next, Matt. But he's a wide receiver. Give us a receiver you want to.
There's a couple receivers I really like, and I'll just quickly, Yeah, I think this one's really obvious and straightforward. You just go to player profile, or you can see the athletic profile, and you know this guy was a first round pick, sort of, right? Ricky Pearsall.
Sort of.
You
Yeah.
you can see how the machine is turning in San Francisco, that they're spitting out the Debos and the Ayuks, and they're moving on, and it's going to be the Jennings and Pearsall show this year in San Francisco. You just feel it, you sense it, you know it. He was really productive at the end of the year, and that's what I care about, because the guy was rehabbing a bullet wound last year. So if you're rehabbing a bullet wound in one of the most badass situations to ever come up in the history of off the field NFL players, then you could, if you just, I'm just going to extract, I'm going to go ahead. That's the one case where I'm fine just extrapolating his second half of the season and forget the first half. And if you did that, he would be a lot closer to Ladd McConkey than most people would, think, right? And I think he should be right there with Rome Odunze as like the next breakout from that 2024
Absolutely.
wide receiver class. To me, it's actually a coin flip between those two. I think that there are going to be some things, especially the Bears defense, and especially their secondary, holding teams down, going to make it harder for Rome Odunze to produce with DJ Moore together. So I think there are some there are some situational forces working against Odunze, where with Pearsall, all these forces are working in his favor. He's got the perfect quarterback. He's got a pure pocket passing quarterback. They drafted Pearsall specifically to replace Deebo Samuel. He's got the yak ability. You look at his explosiveness on Player Profiler. If a guy is going to be in that slot flanker role, that explosiveness is really going to matter. So love Pearsall as a buy high, because it's not like your dynasty league, managers and they see that they drafted him.
That's 2 months ago was the really good time to buy him. Then you could get him cheap. Now that Deebo's out of the picture, I think it's changed.
Well, yeah, but everyone knew that was going to happen. And the problem in dynasty, where we just sort of, talk about hypotheticals like this, is that the manager you're engaging with drafted him pretty recently. Mm-hmm. And he sees this, so you're gonna have to overpay to get him. And what I'm saying is,
second round in rookie drafts last year because he was a late first rounder and Deebo was there. It's not like people were investing a top 5 pick in Pearsall last year. He was a value in drafts last year too.
No, but now all the perceived value has gone so sky high.
They're not going to sell low on a guy that they perceive as coming up and about to break out. A lot of people see this, so you have to know that. What I'm saying is, if you're a dynasty manager, go into that conversation knowing that your league mate knows what they have. Right, they know they're sitting on a premium hand. And
the other thing I'll say about Pearsall
offer something higher, offer something better. Go for it. He's a guy I would go for in terms of most of these, are buy low guys. Whereas Pearsall, he's a little bit more of like I would say I would give you the green light to go for it on a guy like that.
Like a mid to late first, I'd give up for Pearsall without thinking twice. 107, 108, 109. Yes. If I'm sitting on that first round pick, 100%. I'd prefer Pearsall over that.
He's gonna be great, man. I mean, he's gonna outproduce every receiver from this class with the exception of Tet McMillan, and he's still young. So what's the problem? The other receiver I really like, and this is a little bit more of a discount bin player, is Josh Downs.
Before Josh Downs, one thing I want to say about Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah,
I'm just going to add some context here. You said that you don't like looking at second half of the season extrapolated. I think with Pearsall, not only can you kind of look at his second half and extrapolate it, but you could also add like a 25% bonus on top of that because he did it as a rookie. If you look historically, rookies who miss training camp and miss the beginning of their rookie season, it is so hard for them to produce. Look at Jackson Smith-Njigba, broken wrist in the preseason, never really got up to speed his rookie season. We know he's a good player, but he couldn't do it as a rookie. Michael Pittman, early season injury his rookie year, never really did much as a rookie, broke out in year 2. Roman Wilson didn't do anything this year because he was injured, and they asked Mike Tomlin about it in the middle of the season, and he said, it's really hard to jump on a moving train. So the fact that Pearsall missed all of preseason, missed the first half of the season, and then was able to jump in as a rookie and immediately produce, that for me is mind blowing. You almost never see a rookie player do that.
And the similarities to Pittman are extensive.
Yeah.
Extensive. And Pittman gave you, like in year 2, year 3, gave you that wide receiver 14 season.
Yep.
And that's all you're looking for from Ricky Pearsall. Once you get that, bank it, and then you can trade him. Fine. But get that. You're going to get that. You're going to get that from Pearsall, like you said.
Let's hear the bargain bin, Josh Downs, because I like Josh Downs a lot too.
Yeah, so Josh Downs. Well, I love this connection. So the guy in the nexus of this conversation is Michael Pittman, because Michael Pittman is the quintessential fake alpha. Like, so we have some fake alphas around the league. T. Higgins is the most obvious fake alpha out there. Situationally, he got the 10 touchdowns last year, but let's be honest, right? Whereas Michael Pittman, he actually is bigger, faster, stronger than even T. Higgins. And yet, underperformed T. Higgins, certainly on a per game basis last year by leaps and bounds, and has never had a wide receiver 1 season, has a truly pathetic touchdown equity the last 5 years in that team, given that there's been no one else in the red zone. Okay, so he's just not the guy, right? And you can say, yes, back injury last year certainly suppressed his numbers, but regardless, even if he was healthy, you could maybe 5 touchdowns. Ooh, right? That's not it. The number one guy on that team, the guy that's going to go for 150 plus targets, is Josh Downs. Daniel Jones, primarily, but also Drew Lock and others, helped to feed Wan'Dale Robinson 140 targets last year. And there's so many of these, the forces helping Josh Downs. We talked about Chicago. What's my biggest worry with Odunze and DJ Moore? It's the Chicago secondary is too damn good, right? What about the Indianapolis secondary? One of the worst in the league. So if I'm going to be acquiring a wide receiver, one of the things I look for is that team's secondary, and it's bad. So there's going to be shootouts, on the schedule, dome team, everything's kind of lining up for him perfectly. And Anthony Richardson is not long for the league, right? Didn't we just see Trey Lance sign with the CFL? Right? So
negotiating. Not officially signed. He's negotiating with the
I'm
CFL.
I'm glad you pinpointed that, because that's a big factor.
Yes. Sorry. All
not officially signed. He could
Trey
still
Lance,
sign with the
family, his all his people, his agent. Apologies. Okay. Negotiating. Okay. So there's a crystal ball. Let me see your future, and then that Saskatchewan helmet. Is and that's just what it is. Like, there's just certain guys where the read progression that's just not there. The speed of the league is not there. The work ethic's not there. Whatever it is, whatever Pat McAfee, he's hearing, the whisper campaign has broken out into just chatter, right? And so now we're getting a window to what's happening there. And these guys that get benched for Joe Flacco in year 2, where the organization is all in on that guy, and the locker room just says enough, like there's a locker room revolt against this guy, you don't like it. Of course there's going to be guys that come out and are like, oh, we're going to cape up for him. Of course there's PR, right? That you're going to find teammates who are going to go out and say nice things about him. But the front office doesn't want him benched. Okay. They just drafted that guy in the top 5. The problem with the NFL that front offices have and coaching staffs have is that they're not in full control, right? The locker room makes a lot of these decisions. And there's that possibility. You have the revolt possibility. You have the injury probability. So we have an injury finder app, and one of the most injury prone quarterback by leaps and bounds right now is Anthony Richardson. And it's not just about all the running, because you can run it away like Russell Wilson and stay healthy, but you could also run it away like RG3 and get hurt a lot. And so the lack of general awareness and this sixth sense. Have you ever, Jokic? Have you ever seen videos? If you type in Jokic highlights, they just have highlights of Jokic making passes and making moves where he doesn't see what he's doing. He just knows. And it's behind the back. It's no look. There's this one where his back is to the basket and he's looking one way and the ball is over here. And someone goes to swipe it from the blind side, and there's just no way he would see that. And he moves the ball down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because he knows. He just knows. And there are some NFL players where they just know nothing. Like it's not. And the funny thing is Daniel Jones is also one of those players, right? But Daniel Jones isn't at a 10 in terms of lack of awareness on the field like Anthony Richardson is. Daniel Jones is at like an 8. But that's fine. That's going to get him 10 games played because you're going to have, there's the benching possibility and there's the injury. I think between those two things, there's going to be multiple sets of games missed by Anthony Richardson. And I'm projecting Daniel Jones to play more games than Anthony Richardson. Now, if you put Josh Downs and slot him into that Wan'Dale Robinson role, he goes from 140 targets to Robinson. He's just a much better all-around player. He was a super dominant receiver at a young age at UNC. We're talking 150, 160 targets in the context of that offense for Josh Downs. And most people that, like me, I like Tet McMillan. I like a proper X receiver. Josh Downs is a guy that people will let go of in trade because they just don't see the path to him being a wide receiver 1, but he could absolutely get there with targets and a little touchdown luck.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he's that guy who looks like the best receiver out there. I mean, he just, you see what he can do and what Michael Pittman can do, and it's night and day. I mean, Michael Pittman is good at working across the middle of the field and catching the ball 6 yards downfield and falling over. Josh Downs is the guy who can touch the ball and score from anywhere on the field. And I will say, I thought, I do the Dynasty show with Jeff Bell right now, and we were talking about draft needs, and I talked about the Indianapolis Colts needing a tight end. And Jeff Bell said, why would they need a tight end? They already have Michael Pittman. And I think that was just a perfectly concise way to sum up what Michael Pittman does in this offense. Josh Downs is the true wide receiver 1 there.
Easily. Yeah. So that's I think it's a pretty basic case to be made, but it's just a little bit different. It's a little bit different than the Pearsall situation because again, you're the league mate that you're engaging with is going to be much more likely to let Josh Downs go for reasons that are just pure bias. It's just about size and athleticism and system. It's not really about, what is actually likely to happen here? No, we're likely to see a lot of Daniel Jones, and a lot of Daniel Jones in Indianapolis having in comeback mode. When you start to run the numbers on these Josh Downs games, 10 targets, 11 targets, 12 targets, 11 targets, 12 targets, that's what's going to happen. There's a case there for Adonai Mitchell too. To Adonai Mitchell taking over the Alec Pierce role is very live.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another guy where people loved him. Whoever drafted him likes him. So there's a little bit more of that Pearsall sort of affinity for whoever you're going to do a trade with to get Adonai Mitchell, where whoever has Josh Downs is probably not the biggest Josh Downs stan out there.
And the reality is, I think when you say Josh Downs, the immediate gut reaction from almost everybody is going to be, well, Anthony Richardson sucks, so there's no path for Josh Downs to break out, when it could be Daniel Jones. They could bring in, who knows? The reality is
slot receivers do really well with Daniel Jones. We've seen it year after year after year.
It's such a
that's all they had in New York was
Wan'Dale Robinson at some point of every season has been like a top 15 wide receiver, and then when Daniel Jones gets hurt, it just everything goes back to normal for them.
14 targets for Wan'Dale Robinson in a game with Daniel Jones.
Yeah,
that's the thing that happened, man.
Targets, and he's putting up 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the difference. Where Wan'Dale Robinson's going to give you 47 scoreless yards on 14 targets.
But Wan'Dale Robinson is a nice little football player. Okay, he really is. He's a nice little football. I mean, he plays quarterback. I mean, the guy knows how to play football, right? Josh Downs is at another level. Mm-hmm. Josh Downs is like, okay.
He's a route running savant.
He is like a
the
little
kid's
Jerry
really good.
Rice.
A little Jerry Rice.
He's
That's a comment I haven't heard.
He's like mini Jerry Rice. It's like if you had a little ray gun and hit him with like made him small, like he's that good at playing receiver. I mean, super elite. I mean, historic numbers in his first 2 years at UNC. Historic.
Yeah, Josh Downs is one of those guys that I think that no matter who the quarterback is for Indy or even what team he could eventually be on in the future, it's not going to matter for him because he's always going to have that role. He's always going to be the I'm open type of receiver. And honestly, like that's kind of what we've done here is find guys that no matter what their role is on their team or their quarterback or their coach, they should be having themselves some good years or even the next couple years. And as always, Dave, look at that. We under-promised, over-delivered. We gave everybody a ton of players on this. And Matt Kelly, we want to thank you for joining us today, man. This was a heck of a show. There we go. The headphones are gone. He doesn't even know what I'm saying. I could be saying all kinds of bad things about him right now.
Great hair day.
But Matt, you were awesome, man. We were so happy to have you. You dropped, I think like maybe 20 plus players, but I love the context, the in-depth analysis that we got with it. And before we sign off here, can you just let everyone know what you guys have cooking over at Player Profiler and where they can find all your stuff?
Yes. Well, okay. So the number one team to find value, by the way, I think is San Francisco. I like Garendo. I think you can fade a running back going to San Francisco, and that means they traded Mason for a reason. Why they trade Mason? Because they like Garendo. We talked about George Kittle's actually a value. He's very old but still explosive. How many of these early 30s athletic tight ends had career years? Very, very. Travis Kelce most recently, and then Ricky Pearsall. So there's that. At Player Profiler, we just launched our rookie guide. So the rookie guide is the path to crush rookie drafts. It is a truly impressive resource, and so it's right there on the homepage of Player Profiler. Get the rookie guide now. It is out. It is on store shelves. And then there's Fast Draft. Fast Draft also has an all rookie game called Origins, where it's you just draft 6 rookies, the top 4 into your lineup every week. And that game actually, that contest closes the minute before the draft starts, 8 o'clock or 7:59 on Thursday of draft night. So we got 1 month, and it's gonna fill. So you got to get in there, Dave. You got to get in there and draft some more rookie teams.
I got some free time this afternoon. I'll draft some rookie.
Yeah,
teams.
Everyone's got to get in there. Alfredo, Dave, everybody
on Terrence Ferguson. That'll be my claim to fame on Fast Draft this year.
There's still some incredible values. Those Iowa State receivers seem to always go later than they should. Some of these athletic running backs are still going later than they should. Guys like RJ Harvey. So check out the Origins tournament.
RJ Harvey going late. Say less, Matt. I'm sold.
That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, go to the App Store, Google Play. Fast Draft is the app. Check it out. Code Dave, get you a $50 deposit match. Let's go.
There we go. See, Dave, you get to be useful to the people, not just here on the pod, but in life. And that's a beautiful thing, I think. Well, as always, I want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, and for our special guest, Matt Kelly. We'll see you next time. Adios.